Hi guys, today's video is all about note-taking. So we're discussing different study skills that you may be able to use on the lead up to assessments and throughout the year. So note-taking is something that most of us might have done at some point. Okay, you may have only used note-taking in some subjects, and at times you might have thought that it maybe looked a bit of a mess, or you weren't really sure of the way to do notes. I know myself, when I was at school, sometimes I was taking notes and really I would just be scribbling, and then I looked back at it and I thought, I don't think I can make sense of that. So what we're going to try and do is help you with some structure. And I'm going to talk about two main types of note-taking. Okay, one of them is called the Cornell method, and that's the first one I'm going to talk about. Now, you could do this method on a computer, okay, using either a Google Doc or a Word document or even a PowerPoint, okay, or you could just do it on your piece of paper. Now, I still quite like to do things on paper, and actually there's some research that says that if we do it with pen and paper, we tend not to copy as much as we do if we were to type. And that's something that I'm going to talk about a little bit more with regards to note-taking. So I'm about to change my screen so you'll be able to see my piece of paper. And I'm going to talk you through the Cornell method. So hopefully you can all see my piece of paper now. Now, the Cornell method, okay, is a way that we break up our piece of paper. So what we do is up at the top, okay, you leave a little section for your title. Now, it only needs to be small. Now, remember, this just depends on what size of paper you've got. There is some specific measurements, but they don't need to be specific. Okay, we're just going to talk about how up here is where your title will go. So that will depend on what subject you're in and what level you're at and what topic you're on. Okay, so you might say, for example, if it's maths, you might say maths, you might say vectors. Okay, you might say maths national 5 vectors or something else. Now, the rest of the page, okay, down the bottom of your page, you have a slightly larger section, okay, and that is your summary. So I'll talk in a wee minute about what you do there. And in the middle section of the page, we're going to split it into about 2/3 to 1/3. So basically, the right-hand side should be a little bit larger than the left-hand side. Okay, just like that. Now, in here is where you're going to take general notes. Okay, and then here's what we call cues. Now, that could be questions. Okay, it could be keywords. Right, or just anything that's particularly important. Maybe it would be your learning intention or your success criteria. Okay, so basically, if you're taking notes, this is the way that you could break up your page to do it. So I'm going to do this again, and I'm going to do it with an example. Okay, I'm going to do it with a maths example. Because we don't usually take notes in maths, but see, for some people like taking notes and it helps them learn. So taking notes even in maths can be really, really useful. Now, the biggest benefit, okay, of note-taking, if you do it properly, is that you write things in your own words. Okay, whatever you write down should be your own interpretation of what you've heard, what you've read, or what you've even watched. Okay, you might have watched a documentary, a video, you might have been reading a textbook, you might have been reading a book, you may have been listening to your teacher. So all these things, you get that information, okay, and then you want to try and you put it in your own words in your notes. So say, for example, this was a math example. Okay, I'm going to say that it is, I'm going to give myself my title. So I'm going to do Maths National 5. I'm going to do breaking brackets. Right, say for example, that is my title. Now, remember, this is my notes column and this is my cues column. So in my notes in maths, I would probably be copying down the examples more than anything else. So say, for example, your first one was 2 bracket x add 3. Okay, then you might copy down the answer the teacher puts on the board, which is 2x add 6. But maybe in your notes, you would actually say why this is the answer that you've got. So I would maybe put a little arrow and I would say, well, how did I get 2x? Well, your teacher would have said that I was 2 multiplied by x. So I'm actually going to show that that's how I got that. Okay, now over here, okay, we've got that because we've done 2 multiplied by 3. So again, you could put a little arrow and you could show that that's how you got that answer. Okay, so it's just a wee bit more detailed than just regular copying down examples. You put down anything that you think that you might later help you understand. So in terms of like cues down here, something your teacher might say is, what operation do brackets represent? So if there's a particular question that you think has been important that your teacher's asked, or that maybe another pupil has asked, and you think that the answer to that question is really critical in you understanding, you might put that down there. Okay, another one might be, what happens when you multiply by 1? Okay, that might come up in another one of your examples. Now that's just an example. So you might have more examples down here. You're going to have more questions and time goes on. You might have your learning intention, your success criteria, and down the bottom is the summary. Now, the important thing about the summary is you do the summary after the lesson, okay? And in the summary, you will write basically in a couple of sentences what your lesson was about, what was really important, and you try and summarize that into 2 sentences. So in terms of breaking brackets, you might say, when we break brackets, we are multiplying. You might say that it is important to consider the signs associated with each number or letter. And you might say that at the end, you should simplify where possible. So that's just an example of a maths example. Now, obviously, this comes up in other subjects. It would look completely different in English as it would to history, to biology, to PE, to anything at all. So I'm now going to present my screen and I'm going to show you some examples, okay, of note taking. So I'm now sharing a Cornell Notes example. Okay, and this one is about more than half of children in England and Wales bullied about their appearance. Okay, and this has been something that's been a lecture or a lesson about, and somebody's taking notes in that way. So if you want to look at this in more detail, you can pause the video at any time. Okay, I'm going to share another one. Okay, this topic, okay, here is obviously, it looks like it's history. Okay, and it's from 2012, so it's quite old. So this won't be relevant to what you're learning at the moment. However, you can see the way that it's been laid out. So again, if you would like to pause at any point and have a look at the way that it's written, then you can do that. Okay, so I'm going to move over now, and I'm going to talk about a different type of note taking. So the next type of note taking I'm going to talk about is mind mapping. Okay, so if you can see what I've shared, I'm currently sharing Google Slides. Okay, now mind mapping again can be done on a piece of paper. Okay. So, or you could do it on a Google Slide. Now, most of us will be familiar with a mind map. We've probably done it before. And I think a lot of us like mind maps. I definitely like it because they can be quite visually pleasing. You can make sure that they look nice. Okay, you can, and especially if you're doing it on something like Google Slides, you can use the shape function. So insert and then shape, and then you can get circles or squares or anything you want. You can also insert lines. So you'd be able to do a little line like that, and that might help you section off things. So you could do this with anything. Remember, you would want to put in the middle the main topic, and then on the arms of the mind map, you want to try and get further down in details. So the first arm might be another kind of overarching topic, and then the little arms are little more specific details. So that's just an example of how you could use a PowerPoint instead. I'm now going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to do a mind map on my piece of paper. So I've turned it the other way because I think mind maps are usually better the other way. And say, for example, I'm going to do higher biology. And I'm going to do unit 1. Okay, so you might want to do a circle. Yeah, I'm going to pop it in a wee box. And a rectangle to be specific. Okay, there we go. And what you might do is, for example, there's quite a lot of topics within Unit 1 of higher biology. So you might choose one of your topics to be, for example, DNA structure. Right? Say that was one of your first ones. So you might do that. Now it's up to you if you want to put that in a box again, or if you just want to start going with the arms. Now within that topic, there's even more crucial things to learn. So you might off that start putting little arms, and you might have arms with more arms, okay, but you might want to go to some of the main points within that DNA structure topic. You might write hydrogen bond between bases, for example. Now, if you decided to do mind maps for all of your units in higher biology, okay, or even if you did an individual mind map just for DNA structure, that could be the main heading, because if it's huge, then you might need a whole mind map page just to do one of these topics. But you would want to then organise that perhaps in a folder or in a notebook so that everything's all together and you can look through that when you're studying for a certain topic or unit itself. There's another video talking about prioritising studying, and the prioritising would help with this because you would know, well, actually DNA structure is one of my kind of weaker points, so that mind map is going to be really important for me. So that's 2 that we've looked at. There's one other thing I'm going to share with you just now. I'm going to share my screen. There is an app available, and it's called Coggle. So I'm currently sharing what it looks like. Now, I think you can download this app. You can also log in and have a free account. If I just scroll down just now, you can see there's some examples of how people have created mind maps with Coggle, and they look really nice. They're lovely and colourful, so everybody always likes that. It's nicer on the eyes. You can see you can get a free account, and it's just for occasional use. So that might be an idea for some of us as well. Okay, I'm just going to change the screen back to myself. Okay, and to finish off, I'm just going to talk a little bit about why note-taking, again, is really important. Now, remember when you're in class and you're maybe watching a video, listening to teacher, reading something, it's quite easy to get distracted. Okay, and note-taking is a way of focusing as well, because you need to try and get something down on the paper, so you have to be paying a little bit more attention. Also, when we take notes and when we're in class, we usually, you ever done that? You're in class and you really got something and you thought, oh, I really understand this, really, really good at this. But then the next day you walk back in and there's a question on the board, maybe a starter, and it's completely gone out your head. And that's because at the time that you were in class, the things were in your short-term memory. Okay, and the way that we get that to go into our long-term memory is by retrieval. And having notes is a good way for you to retrieve, because you'll be able to go to those notes, look over them, and if you do that really frequently, then that information will eventually transfer into your long-term memory. Okay, and remember, there's lots of subjects you can take notes in. Like I said there, you can even do it for maths. So for a lot of people in maths, things are, you do need the explanations. It's the same with a lot of subjects you might not expect to take notes in. Remember that taking notes is a way of you saying things in your own words, and your own words are the words that you'll understand best. So maybe the way that your teachers maybe said it a few ways, but only one of those ways you understood, and you had to kind of say it in your own head to understand it. And that's the kind of like words that you'll put down in your notes, the ones that you understand, okay, not just copying from the PowerPoint or copying from the textbook, because sometimes these words can be quite complicated, and maybe the sentences there aren't, you can put it in a much simpler way that you can understand. Okay, lastly, taking notes is very important as well in further education. So if anybody goes to college or goes to university, depending on what you go to do, you might be taking notes every single day in lectures. And the last thing you want is for them to be messy and for you not to be able to understand them or use them later. I did that and my notes didn't look very good and they didn't help me very much when I came to studying. So, and sometimes you end up having to redo them and you don't want to be doing that either because you're there and at the time you want to be able to take the notes that are going to be really useful to you later. So the main things are, there was two methods I showed you there. There was the Cornell method where you split up the bit of paper, and there was a mind mapping method. Now, remember that depending on the subject, you might prefer one or the other. Some of us might still prefer just to write things down in bullet points. Okay, but just be careful with bullet points and writing that you don't write big sentences again. Can you do put things in your own words and make sure it's broken up enough that you can see the breakdown from the overarching topic to the finer details coming out. And sometimes these different methods help us show what the actual topic is, then the kind of strands of the topic, and then the specific details of that topic. And remember, you can do this on a computer or you can do it on paper. So it's completely up to you, whatever suits you best. I hope this video has been really useful to you. If you have any questions about anything to do with note-taking or study skills in general, then I'm more than happy for you to come and speak to me at any time at all. Good luck with your studying. Bye.